Before you buy a Forest River, you need to hear this, because the early repair complaints are getting hard to ignore. Owners are running into costly problems faster than anyone expected.
But first, Elkhart's RV industry is booming right now. Production is high.
And service departments are cashing in on it. But here's the part that flips the whole story. 4 R-vee brands avoid those failures almost completely, and they stay cheap to repair long after Forest River units start falling apart. And once you see how different they really are, you won't shop the same way again. Coachmen. There is a certain kind of steadiness you only notice after years of watching how different brands hold up. And Coachmen is a name that keeps coming back in that conversation. Not because it is loud or flashy, but because it has a habit of aging with a level of predictability that many buyers wish they had understood earlier. When the conversation turns to long-term reliability, Coachmen has earned its place by doing something simple that far too many manufacturers forget. Build a product that stays repairable season after season, without forcing the owner into never-ending appointments or expensive return visits. The appeal here is not tied to luxury or novelty. It is tied to a type of construction discipline that shows up years later, long after the initial shine is gone, and the road miles begin to expose shortcuts. In other brands, Coachmen benefits from a slower, more controlled production rhythm. And that difference matters more than most people realize. When units are pushed through assembly lines at high speed, the small mistakes become the expensive ones later. A missed seal, a misaligned cabinet, a rushed wiring harness. Small oversights create the kind of failures that cost real money down the road. Coachmen avoids many of those traps because the build process simply is not as frantic. When technicians talk about brands they enjoy working on, Coachmen appears often, not because it is perfect, but because its problems are straightforward and its systems are easy to reach. Accessibility is a major part of long-term durability, and Coachmen understands that. A repair that would take half a day on higher volume units can often be done in a single hour on a well-maintained Coachmen, and that difference adds up over the years. One of the strongest advantages Coachmen holds is the consistency of its construction materials. Instead of relying heavily on fragile finishes or emphasis on showroom cosmetics, the brand leans toward materials that stay stable even after long periods of vibration, heat, and moisture changes. You notice this especially in the cabinetry and interior fastening points. Doors stay aligned longer. Drawers remain functional instead of sagging. Panels do not shift out of square with every long haul. Little details matter, because every misalignment creates stress on surrounding components. Coachmen interiors tend to resist that early structural drift that shows up so often in larger mass-produced brands, and that directly translates into lower repair costs as the years pass. There is also an advantage in how Coachmen handles electrical routing. Wiring paths tend to be cleaner, straighter, and secured in logical ways rather than stapled wherever space was available. That might sound like a small distinction, but electrical stability is one of the most common weak points in mass-market recreational vehicles. A neat wiring layout means fewer friction points, fewer pinched sections, and fewer sudden failures when the rig is bouncing along rough roads. A single electrical issue on a complex production brand can cost hundreds to diagnose and repair. Coachmen's cleaner approach helps avoid those surprise bills, and over time, that makes a noticeable difference in owner satisfaction. The roof systems on Coachmen units also contribute to the brand's reputation for lasting longer than many expect. While no recreational vehicle is immune to roof wear, Coachmen structures show fewer early life seam failures compared to higher volume brands. That matters because roof repairs are among the most expensive and invasive jobs an owner can face. A seam failure that goes unnoticed can create damage costing several $1,000s, and sometimes more if the water infiltration reaches insulation or framing. A brand that reduces the likelihood of that scenario is a brand that protects its owners from some of the most devastating repair bills in the industry. Another point worth mentioning is how easily service shops can source parts for Coachmen. Because the brand avoids proprietary systems wherever practical, replacement components tend to be widely available, often stocked locally and reasonably priced. That accessibility is not just convenient, it keeps labor hours down. When a part must be ordered through a manufacturer-controlled network, you are at the mercy of shipping delays and exclusive pricing. With Coachmen, most components follow standard specifications, so any competent shop can handle the work without waiting on corporate pipelines. The real value of Coachmen becomes clear when you look at trade-in patterns. Units over 5 years old often maintain structural integrity better than equivalent units built under hurry-up production schedules. Dealers notice that. Technicians notice it. And most importantly, the owners who have spent time and money maintaining their recreational vehicles notice it. A well-kept Coachman often avoids the large depreciation penalty that hits brands known for early failures, especially around major systems like slides, plumbing, and electrical. Coachman earns the 4th position in this countdown because it represents reliability without noise. It is not a brand built to impress on a showroom floor. It is a brand built to remain functional through seasons of real use. And when you tally the long-term costs, the repair frequency, and the straightforward serviceability, the reasons become obvious. Coachman holds up, Coachman stays fixable, and Coachman spares its owners from the creeping repair expenses that accumulate quietly on less disciplined brands. Jayco. The brand earns its position in this countdown because it carries a reputation built not on flash, but on a kind of structural honesty that reveals itself after years of real travel. When you strip away marketing promises and look at what actually endures through heat, cold, vibration, and uneven roads, Jayco consistently shows a level of durability that stands apart from high-volume brands. The brand's commitment to reinforced roof systems and sturdy cabinet frameworks is not a slogan. It is a manufacturing choice that produces fewer stress fractures as the seasons accumulate. Owners notice how Jayco units age more slowly, with interior components that remain aligned, sealed, and functional instead of drifting out of square after the first long haul. One of the strengths that sets Jayco apart is the reinforced roof structure that serves as the backbone of its long-term stability. While no recreational vehicle is immune to roof wear, Jayco's roof assemblies reduce the frequency of early seam failures. That matters because the moment a seam gives way, moisture enters silently, spreading through insulation, paneling, and joints long before any stain appears inside. A single undetected leak can turn a weekend machine into a slow-motion repair burden. Jayco's design slows that process dramatically, protecting the owner from repair bills that often reach several $1,000s when ignored. Jayco interiors also stand out because the cabinetry is anchored into solid structural members, instead of relying on minimal backing or thin wallboard. That decision keeps cabinet faces aligned even after repeated vibration across back roads and interstate stretches. When cabinets shift, electrical wiring behind them shifts as well, and that is where many long-term problems emerge in lower quality builds. Loose fixtures tug on connections, pinch wires, and create small interruptions that later turn into full electrical failures. Jayco's approach minimizes those stress points by keeping the interior frame rigid, preventing the domino effect that transforms a minor adjustment into a service appointment. Part of Jayco's longevity advantage comes from its commitment to consistent manufacturing practices, maintained over decades. The brand has never leaned heavily toward experimental materials or fleeting trends, choosing instead to refine methods that have proven reliable under real-world strain. That restraint is valuable, because every new untested material used by other manufacturers becomes another unknown variable the owner must deal with years later. With Jayco, the materials behave in a predictable way, allowing technicians to diagnose issues faster and more accurately. Predictability saves money because service departments spend less time searching for hidden fasteners, concealed wiring paths, or obscure component mounts. Well-understood design translates into shorter labor hours and fewer return visits that drain both time and confidence. Another benefit often overlooked is how Jayco units hold up during long-distance travel, especially when covering rough terrain or extended interstate stretches. Many recreational vehicles begin to show interior separation after repeated cycles of expansion and contraction caused by climate changes. Jayco construction tolerates those stresses more gracefully because the framing remains tight, and the joints are reinforced in ways that reduce micro-movement. Micro-movement is the hidden enemy of long-term durability. It loosens screws, shifts panels, and allows tiny gaps to form along seams where moisture can sneak in. Jayco limits that progression by resisting early flex, and that resistance keeps the owner from discovering costly interior repairs years earlier than expected, preserving both the function and the structural character of the unit. Jayco builds long-term value by using accessible, non-proprietary components that technicians can source locally, reducing delays, easing repairs, and preventing the extended downtime that disrupts travel and inflates labor costs. Its systems remain familiar and serviceable, so problems are solved efficiently rather than turning into prolonged service ordeals. That stability carries into trade-in performance, where Jayco units show fewer structural issues, such as roof waviness, cabinet shift, or wall sag. Appraisers notice that integrity, offering stronger resale values that soften the financial impact of upgrades. When a product maintains its structure, it maintains its worth, and that is Jayco's advantage. And this momentum sets the stage for the transition toward dependable KZ craftsmanship. If this breakdown is helping you see the real differences between these brands, take a moment to like the video, subscribe for more detailed guidance, and add your perspective below so others can benefit from insight you bring here today. KZ. Some brands build attention. KZ recreational vehicles built respect. Over the years, technicians, appraisers, and longtime owners keep coming back to the same quiet conclusion. These units do not visit the service bay as often as the big-name competition. And when they do, the repairs are simpler and less expensive to finish. That is why KZ sits this high on the list. Not because of flashy features, but because the construction choices behind the walls are aimed at control, not speed. In a market where so many manufacturers chase volume, KZ chose a different path, and that decision shows up directly in long-term repair costs. The first thing that stands out with KZ is production pace. These are not hammered together on the same breakneck schedule as some of the massive corporate brands. Fewer units roll out each day, and that slower rhythm buys something you cannot see on a sales sheet. Time to get the basics right. Seams are sealed with more care. Wiring harnesses are routed with intention instead of convenience. Plumbing is laid out where human hands can reach it later. Every one of those details looks small when the rig is new. Years later, they are the exact reasons an owner is paying a modest invoice instead of a painful multi-thousand-dollar bill. KZ interiors reveal that same mindset. Open a cabinet in a well-kept KZ recreational vehicle, and you notice how solid the anchoring feels. The cabinets bite into structural members, not thin decorative wallboard. Hinges stay aligned, doors shut cleanly, drawers do not wobble or bind after a few trips down rough two-lane roads. That stability matters, because interior movement is what starts to tear other brands apart from the inside. When cabinets shift, they pull at screws, tug at electrical lines, and slowly grind against delicate finishes. KZ designs reduce that internal motion, and that cuts off an entire chain of hidden wear before it ever begins. Technicians often mention wiring when they talk about KZ, and not because it fails, but because it is sane to work on. Instead of tangled bundles tucked into inaccessible pockets, KZ harnesses tend to run in straight, supported paths. Connections are visible. Junctions are labeled or at least logically placed. That structure saves time when something does go wrong. A flickering light or a dead outlet can be diagnosed without removing half the interior. Lower labor hours mean lower invoices. That is the difference between spending a little on maintenance and feeling like the service department has a direct debit line to your bank account. Another area where KZ stands apart is plumbing layout. It is not glamorous, but it is where many large brands cut corners and pay for it later. In a KZ, valves, traps, and key junctions are usually reachable without demolition. That means a leak under a sink or a fitting at a low point drain does not turn into a major rebuild. A technician can replace a section of line or a fitting quickly, and the owner walks out, paying for a simple fix instead of hours of exploratory labor. Multiply that pattern across a decade of seasonal use, and the savings become very real. The roof and wall structures follow the same philosophy. KZ does not promise perfection, and no recreational vehicle is immune to water. But the brand uses methods that reduce early failures. Roof membranes are applied with attention to transitions where walls meet radius edges. Fasteners are better supported. Sealant is not relied upon as the only line of defense. That layered approach slows down the aging curve. Instead of fighting seam issues in the early years, owners often enjoy long stretches of trouble-free seasons before any serious roof maintenance is required. Avoiding even a single major roof repair can mean keeping several $1,000s in your pocket over the life of the unit. Depreciation patterns back up the reputation. Used KZ units, especially those that have seen reasonable care, often hold value better than similar rigs from more aggressive brands. Appraisers look for sagging walls, soft spots around windows, evidence of repeated interior repairs, and they simply see fewer of those warning signs in KZ trade-ins. Better structure leads to better offers, and that directly affects how much money an owner recovers when it is time to move on. It is not about pretending a recreational vehicle is an investment. It is about losing less when you finally sign the next set of papers. KZ benefits from broad parts compatibility, using industry-standard components that keep repairs affordable and avoid long delays when failures strike mid-season. That practical design philosophy continues throughout the build with slower production, cleaner layouts, and accessible systems that reduce costly surprises. Issues still occur, but they remain smaller and easier to address as the miles accumulate over the years. That quiet discipline is what earns KZ the second position in this ranking, and it sets the stage for the final brand on this list, the one that many longtime owners quietly describe as the benchmark for lasting build quality and repair-friendly design. Before moving on, consider subscribing to stay informed about the shifts affecting R-vee ownership. Accurate insight protects your wallet, and staying subscribed ensures you are never caught off guard when the next change or reliability warning emerges across the market. Lance. Some brands climb into the conversation because of trends or dealer incentives. Lance rises for a very different reason. It rises because owners who keep their units through long seasons of real use keep reporting the same steady pattern. Lance holds its shape. Lance keeps its strength. Lance survives the road in ways that reveal how much thought went into every joint, seam, and frame connection. While other brands show their weaknesses early, Lance tends to age with a kind of quiet confidence earned through disciplined construction rather than clever marketing. When you spend enough time around service bays, trade-in inspections, and long-haul travelers, you begin to recognize that pattern. Lance does not fall apart the same way others do, and that difference matters more with every passing year. The backbone of Lance durability starts with its structural framing. Instead of relying on minimal support points or thin assemblies that flex under road stress, Lance uses a framing method that holds its geometry longer. That stability prevents the subtle twisting and bending that start interior problems in so many other units. When the frame stays firm, cabinetry stays aligned. When cabinetry stays aligned, wiring does not get pinched or rubbed. When wiring stays clean, electrical systems age smoothly instead of building hidden strain. It is a chain reaction, except Lance starts at the strongest possible link, and everything down the line benefits from that choice. Another strength is Lance Wall construction, which is engineered to resist moisture intrusion more effectively than larger mass production brands. Moisture is the silent enemy of recreational vehicles. It gathers in tiny gaps, spreads behind panels, and destroys framing long before a stain appears inside. Lance walls remain tightly bonded, reducing the number of micro openings where moisture tries to enter. That resistance is not just theoretical. It shows up in long-term inspections, where older units still maintain their rigidity, while comparable rigs reveal soft spots, bubbling veneers, or swollen sections near windows and seams. Avoiding that type of damage saves owners from the kind of repairs that easily climb into several $1,000s. Roof integrity plays an equally important role. Lance roof structures do not rely heavily on sealant as the sole defense. Sealant breaks down under sunlight and temperature swings, which is why so many units begin to leak early in their lifespan. Lance roofs emphasize physical stability rather than chemical reliance. That construction choice slows aging dramatically. When a roof holds its shape, the seams remain tight. When seams remain tight, the interior remains dry. That dryness preserves insulation, wiring, and framing, protecting the owner from costly tear-outs and rebuilds that other brands face far too soon. Inside the unit, Lance maintains a standard that reflects thoughtful planning. Cabinets connect into structural supports rather than thin interior panels. Hardware stays tight because it is anchored into material built to hold it. Doors remain square. Drawers glide without wobble. Over time, these characteristics prevent the spiraling deterioration that occurs when poorly supported cabinets begin to sag. Sagging cabinets lead to stress fractures in trim, panel pull-away, and even appliance misalignment. Lance avoids those cascading failures by keeping everything secure from the beginning. Technicians often praise Lance for something most owners never think about until the first repair is needed: component accessibility. Lance does not bury essential systems behind walls or under flooring in ways that force technicians into hours of disassembly. Many service points are reachable without gutting the interior. That accessibility is not just convenient, it saves labor hours, and that protects the owner's wallet. A repair that might take half a day on other brands can often be completed far faster on a Lance, because the layout makes sense. When you consider long-term ownership, that sensible design becomes one of the strongest financial advantages the brand offers. Another long-term benefit comes from Lance's use of non-proprietary components wherever possible. Proprietary parts lock owners into limited supply channels and unpredictable pricing. Lance avoids that trap. Many of the brand's systems use widely available components that can be sourced from multiple suppliers, giving owners flexibility and keeping repair costs fair. This choice reduces wait times for parts, minimizes downtime, and encourages service shops to work more efficiently. When the parts are straightforward, the repairs are straightforward, and straightforward repairs are cheaper across the board. Lance's depreciation patterns show how well its structure endures, with 10-year-old units often retaining value because their systems remain stable instead of breaking down. That durability reassures appraisers and buyers alike. The brand's strength comes from disciplined construction that resists the structural failures common elsewhere. Lance focuses on longevity, not shortcuts, giving owners something dependable, repairable, and predictable that continues to hold together season after season. And with Lance anchoring the top position, the countdown reaches its natural end, leaving behind a clear picture of which brands stand strong when the miles get long. So now you know which R-vee brands actually hold up, and which ones quietly drain your wallet. If you learned something new today, make sure to like this video so more R-vee owners can dodge these repair traps. I want to hear from you too. Comment below with your own experiences, good or bad, because real stories matter more than marketing. And if you want more deep dives into R-vee durability, repair costs, and industry secrets, hit subscribe and turn on notifications.